These are Douglas wheels that I have to go on a set of STU desert tracks, front and rear, that I'm going to put on my RMAX. These are Douglas wheels with color matched beadlock rings for the RMAX, which is a slightly different color. Well, it's not even slightly, it's a lot different color. They're both blue, but they are very different blues. So I've never seen an RMAX with sand tires on it. I ride a lot of sand. I got the RMAX just recently, and I did a little bit of mountain riding. I essentially bought it for just that trip, and then I drive it around my neighborhood some. So I'm going to UTV takeover soon, and since this car is not going to be ready for UTV takeover, as you see, I already took my other two cars, the red Yamaha and the red Can-Am. I took those already. They're dropped off at the sandbox, but I was hoping to have this car done for UTV takeover, but I'm not. So I'm gonna slap these desert tracks on my RMAX, and I'm gonna take the RMAX too. I think it'll be kind of cool. So STU is that stands for Sand Tires Unlimited. They're very popular, and they've been around like 30 something years, I think since the 80s. Very popular sand tire manufacturer that makes all kinds of different types of sand tires. Old school buggies, with VW engines and things like that. That's kind of how far they go with it, how far back they go. And so the desert tracks are kind of an unusual tire. They are in fact designed for sand and I think kind of loose dirt, or maybe I've heard some people have success with them on like hard pack even. So I got these used at a good deal. STUs are generally pretty expensive tires. I got these things for, I thought, about half of what they are new for, and they look like they're almost new. So I got these from a guy I met, another Yamaha guy in the Phoenix area. And so I'm going to try these on the RMAX. These are 1450s in the rear. And then I think they're 1250s that go in the front. And the front ones are cut a little bit. You can see where the paddle used to go all the way to the edge, the shoulder, like these do. So the rears are not cut. The fronts have like the edges cut. The shoulders kind of cut off of the paddle. So I'm going to put those on the RMAX. I'm going to mount those up. All right, so this wheel was already slid in the tire, so I didn't get into that part. But basically, the wheel, once the wheel's just sitting there, you got to, on the back side, just slide the tire over the front side, like this, and just set it as even as you can. You don't really have to worry about the back bead yet, but make sure that this is centered. You can just kind of visually center it. The rings do a pretty good job of kind of helping that lip find the right place. Also something I'll mention about Douglas is they do have a logo printed on or stamped on their beadlock rings. There's also their logo stamped on their center face, and that lines up where the valve stem is vertical. So if you care, I try to get all that centered. That if you buy them, that's the way they are. They're from their factory. They get those things right. So essentially, I'm just going to go around now and set these under there. They are kind of half mooned, so you do have to have these turned the right way. And they have this deal where it's like the edge sticks out one way, so you want to make sure the bolt basically goes in like this. And just kind of finger tighten them all first. Don't get anything torqued or any tools or anything in them yet. So I just kind of go around and just catch one or two threads all the way around the whole wheel. When you're doing this, if you do switch sides, be careful because it goes in twos. So these two, these two, these two. So like if I put one right here, I'm off. You know, because the twos have to go. So if you come over on this side and you try to do it opposite, make sure it's 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2. Make sure it lines up properly. Otherwise, you'll have to redo it. These bolts do have washers on them. Make sure you get the washers on. Okay. So all of them just kind of have, the threads are just barely caught. Nothing is tightened at all. Also, I should mention that when you're doing sand tires, your direction is important. The paddles are supposed to scoop the sand in a certain direction. So your rears need to have, you have, first of all, your front wheels and your rear wheels are different wheels. But then second of all, the sidewall has to be the correct direction as well. So your tires have to go on the same corner every time. So there is a left and a right, a front and a rear. And if your fronts are smoothies, it won't matter. But if they are rudders like mine, or if they're the kind that have paddles on them, then they are also directional. So all 4 tires and all 4 wheels have to be put on in the correct direction. So don't just slap them all on, because then when you go to put them on your car, they might be the wrong direction. And it really matters in sand. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically go in a crisscross pattern and begin torquing these bolts. And I do it on a real easy setting first with a weak torque gun, just a little 12-volt Milwaukee with a, I think that's an 8mm 12-point socket. And I put my gun on the lowest torque setting, so it's barely more than finger tight, and I go in a star pattern all the way around. All right, so I got an 8mm. It's a 12-point. It doesn't have to be deep socket, but my 12 points are deep sockets. And I have my drill set on the lowest torque setting. It's so low that I can hold it with my fist. So I don't know how many inch-pounds that is, but it's not very many. And I'm just going to go in a crisscross pattern. And I'm not exact on this crisscross, but I'm at least ballparking it. So after I've kind of gone in crisscross, you know, kind of plus sign, I've done that once or twice. So at least I have one tight over here, over here, over here, over here. Then I just kind of alternate back and forth, mostly because I can't keep track of each one that I do in my mind. So I know I can do this one and the one opposite of it, and then this one and the one opposite. So I slowly work around like this now. And that's the way I keep track of it in my mind. Again, I'm still in the weakest setting. So I've gone around it all the way at least once now, and I'm going to continue. I'm going to go around it a whole second time, still on the weakest setting. The reason I do this is once they've all been tightened to this to some level, then the first one you do will be loose again because all the others have compressed the whole tire down. So it's worth going around once or twice. Always making sure you're going across and across, back and forth. So I can feel some of these are looser. All right, now I'm going to get the torque wrench and set them all to the proper torque. All right, Douglas manual calls for 15 to 25 foot-pounds. So I'm starting at the minimum. I'm going to go to 15 foot-pounds, the same pattern that I did a minute ago. So 15 foot-pounds is not very much. It's almost the minimum that my torque wrench will do for this size wrench. So that's that. Kind of disappointing. Some of my powder coating is chipping up around the bolts. When they tighten, they grab and chipped up that powder coating. So we'll see how long before that stuff starts coming off, but it's not looking good. Okay, so now I'm just going to connect to the valve stem, start airing it up. So the back bead isn't set. It's basically just laying on the bottom of the wheel. So right when I initially start airing it up, some of that air is going to go out, and all I really do is like push on the tire in such a way that hopefully it'll just grab enough to start inflating. Once the tire starts inflating and getting some pressure, I basically overinflate it, and the rear bead will eventually just pop on. If it doesn't, and I have like over 30 pounds of pressure in it, I'll stop and try to pop it on with some other methods. But I don't really overfill it more than 30 pounds or so, 40 at the most. This doesn't say what the maximum is. Lots of times your tires will say do not inflate more than a certain number of psi. Oh yeah, here it says right here, do not exceed 35 psi. So I'm not going to put more than 35 PSI in it because the tire carcass itself is not made to hold more pressure than that. And 35 PSI is not very much for a tire. Lots of tires will take 50, you know, before it really starts to actually break down. But these are sand tires. They're really thin. They're designed to be lightweight, and they're not designed for rocks or anything. So soft sand is not hard for rubber to pass through. So that's why the tires are kind of thin. And it just takes low pressure because of that. So that's all. I'm going to start putting air in it. If it gets to 35 and I have still not heard the bead pop on, then I'm going to take it off and try something else. All right, so it's already taken air. There it goes. It popped on with like 12 pounds of pressure. That's all it took. So on sand tires, I like to run about 10 PSI on my tires. So I'm just going to stop right there. And boom. So here they are mounted up on the RMAX in the shop. As you can see, the offset makes the total track width quite a bit wider, which is nice and needed on a tall, heavy machine like the RMAX in the sand dunes. And here it is at Little Sahara, Oklahoma for UTV Takeover 2021. We had a blast.